Hey, it's Mirella Manelli, and today I'm going to show you how to achieve this milk tea shade using all Kenra color, using highlights and lowlights. So let's go ahead and get started. So in order to get started with this technique, I went ahead and pre-sectioned her, and if you watch any of my videos, you know I like to keep everything really simple. So utilizing her natural part, which happens to be right down the center, and then from the apex right behind the ear, just basically making 3 separate sections and separating the front from the back. And we're gonna be adding in her highlights starting from the bottom and working our way up. So I'm gonna start by adding in some highlights right here on the hairline. Now, I usually like adding a few highlights right here just because if your client wears her hair up or even just brings her hair forward, this is the hair that's going to be visible, so I like to add a little something here. So I'm going to go ahead and isolate this right out. So I'm going to start my section right behind the ear, and there's this little bone right here that's part of the occipital, so I'm going to use that as my guide and bring that right on down to the center. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. And because she is mostly blonde, I want to maintain that blonde. We're going to be moving up these old highlights up a little higher, and we're also going to be adding some lowlights in here for depth. So to get started on this hairline right here, I'm going to go ahead and weave this part down. This is my favorite way to have really great control right on the hairline because we're working on an area that's curved, so it can get kind of a little bumpy right there if we're pulling our foil down. So I'm going to show you a little hack I like to do. So I'm going to fold my foil over my comb like this. I'm going to insert my foil and bring this hair right on up. And now this is going to give me a flat surface so I can highlight. Now what I'm using is Beyond Bond Lightener at a 1:2 mixing ratio with 20 volume developer, and I really like using Beyond Bond for natural blondes. You can see she's got pretty fine hair, it's a little fragile, so this is the perfect lightener for her hair type. Now because she has fine hair, I'm not really concerned with taking these highlights back to back. She's gonna look pretty blonde even with wider subsections in between. So sometimes looking at your client's hair texture and density is really important in determining how wide of a subsection you're creating. Now once I get these two back to back, I'd like to just kind of sandwich these together so I know that that's part of the hairline. This is an area where I'm gonna keep a really close eye on because this is more of a fragile area, so I wanna make sure that once this is done processing, these are gonna be the first foils that I pull out. So I'm gonna do the same thing to the other side and then we'll get started in the interior. Now to marry these two sections together, I'm just gonna do 2 more horizontal highlights, kind of creating them back to back, same wide subsection that we did to our hairline here. I just like to add these for a little extra security, especially when your client wears her hair up. A lot of times when I'm working on fine, fragile hair that does have a lot of blonding on it and tends to break really easily, having a bowl of conditioner is really useful because we don't want to create any overlap, number one, and the second thing is you can really utilize this opportunity to add a treatment to the hair. So that's why I like to have my extra little bowl of conditioner. This also allows for the hair to stick to the foil. So if you're dealing with a really small rooted area, this is a great hack for you to have more foil control. So now that I have the hairline completely done, this is where we're gonna start adding in our low light. So I'm gonna come up just a couple fingers deep here and then create a diagonal back section. Now for this area, what we're gonna be creating is a highlight, and we're gonna be putting a low light right underneath this. Because what you can see here with her entire head really, is she has all of this amazing grow out. This is all of her natural hair, and then you can see her old highlights. So what I wanna do is bring up some of the highlights, but also add some depth back in because her ends are just looking almost just too blonde in comparison to what's going on towards the top. But I still want to maintain the blonde that she has on her ends. I just want to have a nice transition. So what I'm going to do is add a highlight right on top of this section. So I start out with a clean slice, and I want my highlights to look a little bit more natural instead of really tiny as what she has prior. So I'm gonna highlight down here. This is just gonna give me a much more like natural and organic feel to how the highlights are laying versus taking a scalp highlight. So I'm gonna take my highlights a little higher, but still slightly rooted. Adding my conditioner right here and just kind of dragging that lightener down just a little bit. So basically it just dilutes that transition. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip that up. And what I'm gonna do for this section is add in her low light. So I'm gonna take this entire section and utilizing this comb right here, which has little teeth on it, just gonna highlight that hair for me. And I'm gonna add my low light formula. So what this is 10B in Demi-permanent with a few ribbons of 7A. Just kind of wanted to deepen that 10B, which is a 10 beige. And the 7A is just gonna make it a little darker and then also just add a little bit more of a cooling effect to the already cool beige tone that we're adding in. Now, I am also going to be using my conditioner on the ends because like I mentioned before, I want to maintain the blonde. I just want to add the depth in there. So if you don't want to use conditioner, you can use clear in Demi for this part. But I create a line here and then I'm just going to drag that right into my conditioner. Again, kind of creating a little transition so that way we keep the ends kind of light. And then to isolate this out, I'm gonna flat wrap these so that way I know which one's my highlight and which one's my low light. And I'm gonna do the same thing to the other side. Now to marry this all together, we're gonna do a horizontal section. So you can see what we're doing is brick layering, and we're just going to continue on with our diagonal backs and horizontals. I also think when you're highlighting down here towards the bottom of the hair, you're able to add in more of a ribboning effect versus highlighting right here at the base. Neither is the right or wrong way to do it. It's just a matter of the type of effect that you're trying to create. So I'm gonna continue up with this same pattern until the entire back section is complete, and we're gonna make sure we finish off with a horizontal. Now that I'm all done with the back, we're gonna move on to the front and the sides. So the money piece is really, really important to most of your clients. This is the area that they're going to be paying attention to the most. So what I'm going to be doing is isolating out what her face frame is going to be. So I'm going to go about just 2 finger widths from her hairline and then bring that right on down behind the ear. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Now, because this section's pretty wide and she also has the temple area, which most people have a little bit of sparseness, you should naturally notice there's going to be a space. So this is just how I know where to separate these 2 sections. So I'm going to highlight this section a little later. Now, because everybody's hairline's different, I like to see how the hairline's laying. So what I'm going to do is take in some diagonal sections, very similar to what we did in the back. I like to highlight the hairline parallel to their natural hairline. This is kind of the only area that I like to get pretty close if I am going to get close with my highlights. I'm going to take another section and I'm probably going to do 3 back-to-backs. My goal with doing a hairline highlight is to make sure that I'm covering all of the space over this ear. This is the forgotten zone and you don't want to have a black hole right there. My subsections are about a 1/2 inch wide. So the closer you put your highlights together, the more blonde we're gonna create. And that's kind of what I want to do with my model today. I want to make sure that her hairline is pretty blonde. You can also see that I'm leaving that top section out so that we can have the most control along the face frame. This is the most important area for you to be really picky with how you place your highlights, because this is the area that your clients are going to see first. So now I'm going to take care of this little front hairline here. So I'm going to take a small section down, again parallel to her hairline. I love how baby lights look on the hairline. However you highlight the hairline is exactly how it's going to look. Because when they pull their hair back, if you add in baby lights, it's going to look like you have baby lights. If you put something chunky, which I definitely would not recommend, along the hairline, it's going to look chunky. So I feel like the Baby Lights is a nice, safe selection. Now you can see too, I'm even highlighting right here at the root area. That's gonna give you more control. So very different from what I did in the back, where we're highlighting away from the root area. So again, just depends on how much control or how flowy you want those highlights to look. Now we're gonna work on this interior, and what I'm gonna do for this entire section right here is work horizontally so we can get this really beautiful blanket coverage, and we'll finish off with the top with a highlight, and that will just give us a lot of dimension and a really beautiful result. We're gonna slice and highlight further away from the base, and then we're gonna add our low light right underneath, grabbing that entire section and using this weaving comb. And I'm gonna continue up this entire side until I get towards the top and do the same thing to the other side. I'm gonna let her process room temperature for about 30 minutes, and then I'm gonna come back here and then show you her final glaze. So it's been about 30 minutes. I went ahead and shampooed her out, and I think we have a really beautiful canvas to work with. So I could easily go in with a singular toner here, but what I wanna do is just bring some harmony between the low lights that we added in, along with a color melt, and we're gonna add in her final color. So what I decided to mix up for the shadow area, again, we're gonna keep this really subtle like we did for her lowlights. I'm gonna use exact same formula. So I'm gonna use 10B with just a few ribbons of 7A right at the root area, and then I'm gonna drag that right into 10B, 10A, and a little bit of Diamond Frost. I'm gonna start my application in the back and just kind of drag that down about a couple inches or so. And I'm gonna do my application in verticals. I just really love that because it just makes it look really seamless. This formula honestly is gonna be so close to her natural anyway. We're gonna see a lot of subtlety to it. It's mostly to just add the slightest bit of shadow, mostly to the highlight area. And then here's where I'm gonna add in our lighter color through the ends. Now the reason why I chose the formula that I used is because the 10B is a 10 beige. So we're gonna get that nice beigey, kind of sandy, cool color. But in order to even enhance it a little bit more, I added in the 10 ash. And I just really love the Diamond Frost, the light reflection that it gives. So that's why I added about a quarter of my formula with the Diamond Frost. So I'm gonna continue my application starting in the back, working through the front, and then we're gonna process her for about 20 minutes. And here's the final result. As you can see, we got a really gorgeous, cool tone. I really love how the highlights came together, the really subtle lowlights, and even her subtle color melt. I think this complements her skin tone and really makes her eyes pop, but I would love to know what you think down below.